You've probably started a journal at some point and quietly given up on it. A few pages of raw feeling, then silence. You decided writing just wasn't for you. Most people assume that putting pain into words works because it lets something out, but release was never really the point. What actually changes you on the page looks more like construction than release, and it explains why some people write for years and feel exactly the same, while others rewire their relationship to a single memory in 4 short sessions. In the 1980s, the psychologist James Pennebaker ran an experiment that seemed almost too simple to matter. He asked people to write about their most upsetting, unresolved experiences for 15 to 20 minutes 4 days in a row. No structure, no therapist, no feedback. Just a blank page and permission to be honest. Some of the people in that study wrote about things they had never told another living person. Health visits dropped in the months that followed. Immune markers improved. People slept better and reported less physical pain. And none of it involved anyone hearing their story out loud. Here is where it gets stranger. Pennebaker and later researchers went back through the writing itself, word by word, looking for what separated the people who improved from the people who didn't. It wasn't how much emotion they expressed. It wasn't how many painful details they included. It was whether their language changed. The people who benefited most were the ones whose sentences shifted across those 4 days from chaos toward explanation. They started using more words like because, realize, and understand. Their writing stopped being a wound repeated on the page and became something closer to a story with a cause and an effect. That shift has a name in psychology: insight. And it turns out insight, not catharsis, is what your mind is actually rewarded for. This is where cognitive reframing enters the picture, because insight and reframing are doing the same job from 2 different angles. An unresolved memory usually lives in your mind without real structure. No clear beginning, no clear reason, just a loop that resurfaces at inconvenient times. Writing forces that memory into a sequence. First this happened, then this is what it meant. The moment a memory gets a shape, your mind can finally stop treating it as an unfinished emergency. The psychologist Dan McAdams, who spent much of his career studying what he calls narrative identity, found something similar in how people describe their own lives. The people who cope best with hardship aren't the ones who suffered least. They're the ones who can tell a coherent story about how the hardship fit into who they became. Meaning arrives through structure, not through the size of the wound. Which brings the question somewhere older than psychology. Long before Pennebaker or McAdams, the philosopher and psychiatrist Viktor Frankl argued that suffering becomes bearable the moment a person can locate some meaning inside it, even meaning they choose rather than discover. Frankl wasn't talking about journaling, he was talking about survival inside a concentration camp. But the underlying claim is the same one showing up in a modern laboratory. Pain, without a story to hold it, tends to stay raw, and pain folded into a narrative tends to soften, even when nothing about the original event has changed. This is worth sitting with because it means the advice to just write your feelings down was always slightly incomplete. Venting alone can even leave some people feeling worse, replaying the same emotional loop without ever building the explanation that lets the mind file it away. The page only helps once it starts asking why, not only what. There is a limitation worth naming honestly. This kind of writing is not a replacement for therapy, and it is not designed for processing acute trauma alone, particularly anything involving abuse, violence, or ongoing danger. Pennebaker's protocol was tested on people recalling difficult but survivable experiences, and researchers still recommend professional support for anything more severe. Writing builds structure. It does not replace a trained person who can respond to what that structure reveals. So, here is what an evidence-informed version of this actually looks like if you want to try it yourself. Pick one unresolved experience, something that still carries some charge when you think about it. Write about it for 15 to 20 minutes by hand or by typing without stopping to fix grammar or spelling. Do this on 4 separate days, and you can return to the same event each time or let it evolve. The second step matters as much as the first. Do not just describe what happened. Push yourself, especially by the 3rd and 4th session, to explain it. Why do you think it happened? What did it reveal about what you needed, feared, or valued? Notice whether your language is shifting from "because it happened to me" toward "because of what it meant." A third, smaller step, read back what you wrote on day 1 after you finish day 4. Most people are startled by how much more coherent and how much less overwhelming the story has become in their own hands. None of this requires you to share a single word with anyone. The change happens in how your mind organizes the memory, not in who witnesses it. You still have that notebook somewhere, the one you abandoned after 3 pages. It wasn't that writing failed you, it was unfinished. The story hadn't found its because yet.